The year is 1988. Rumtek Monastery, Sikkim, foothills of the Himalayas. 3 Tibetan monks sit silently in a room rigged with medical equipment. Wires are attached to their bodies. Harvard scientists watch from behind a monitor. For hours, these monks meditate, and what the machines record shouldn't be humanly possible. Their oxygen consumption drops 64% below resting levels. 64%. For comparison, when you sleep, your metabolism only drops by 10 to 15%, and that's just the beginning. Because this story isn't just about monks who can conserve energy. It's about what happens to their cells, to their brains, and to their biological clocks. And why the Buddha was already talking about this 2,600 years before the MRI was invented. This story begins with one person, Herbert Benson, a cardiologist from Harvard Medical School. In the early 80s, Benson became interested in something his colleagues considered crazy. He wanted to scientifically measure what happens to the bodies of Tibetan monks when they meditate, and he got direct access from the Dalai Lama. February 1981. Upper Dharamsala, India. Benson attached disc thermometers to 3 monks practicing what is known as Tummo, inner fire, and what was recorded? The temperature in their fingers and toes rose by as much as 8.3 degrees Celsius. Now, this is important to understand. What increased was peripheral temperature, fingers, toes, not core body temperature. The media often misquotes this part, but still, an 8-degree increase in the extremities, purely through the power of the mind. That was already beyond what medical science deemed possible. But the truly mind-blowing discovery came 7 years later. Rumtek Monastery, 3 different monks, and this time, they weren't measuring temperature. They were measuring metabolism. The result? During a specific meditation, their oxygen consumption dropped 64%, the largest decrease in metabolism ever recorded in a living human. And with a different meditation technique, their metabolism actually increased by 61%. Think about that for a second. One person, sitting completely still, able to drop their metabolism far below the state of sleep, or raise it as if they were running, simply by changing what their mind is doing. Oh, and one more thing. Benson also documented a group of monks who spent the night on a Himalayan cliff at an altitude of 4,500 meters. Temperatures at minus 18 degrees Celsius, wearing only thin cotton shawls. They dried sheets of wet cloth dipped in freezing water, using only their body heat, in about an hour. Okay, so what exactly is this technique these monks are practicing? It's called Tummo. In Tibetan, it means inner fire. It's part of the 6 yogas of Naropa, 6 advanced yoga practices in the Vajrayana tradition. Simply put, Tummo combines 3 elements. First, highly controlled breathing patterns. It's called vase breathing. You take a deep breath and hold it in your lower abdomen, creating internal pressure. Second, intense, focused concentration. Third, and most unique, visualization. You imagine a flame along your spine, from the base to the crown of your head. This fire isn't a metaphor. In practice, you actually see this fire with your mind's eye. In 2013, Maria Kozhevnikov from the National University of Singapore, who also has Harvard affiliations, conducted a more rigorous study. 10 expert meditators in a remote monastery at an altitude of 4,200 meters, and she found something Benson hadn't been able to prove. Their core body temperature, not just their fingers, rose to 38.3 degrees Celsius, fever zone, purely through meditation. But here is the most fascinating part of Kozhevnikov's study. She discovered that if you only do the breathing without the visualization, the temperature rises slightly and quickly drops. What maintains the temperature increase is the visualization of the fire. In other words, the mind, a trained imagination, is doing the actual work. The breath is just the spark. Now we get to the part that keeps people awake at night. Telomeres. If you've never heard this word before, no problem. The explanation is simple. Imagine your DNA is like a shoelace. At the end of every shoelace, there's a protective plastic tip to keep the lace from fraying and breaking. Well, a telomere is that plastic tip. It sits at the end of each of your chromosomes, protecting your DNA from damage. The problem is, every time a cell divides, and your cells are constantly dividing throughout your life, these telomeres shorten just a bit. Like the plastic tip of a shoelace getting thinner every time you tie and untie it. The shorter your telomeres, the more biologically old your cells are. Elizabeth Blackburn from UCSF, who won the 2009 Nobel Prize for discovering telomerase, the enzyme that protects telomeres, collaborated with Elissa Epel and found something that changed our understanding of aging. They discovered that chronic stress, psychological, not physical stress, can accelerate telomere shortening, the equivalent of about 1 extra decade of aging. So your mind, your stress levels, literally alters the speed at which your cells age. And this is where meditation comes in. Clifford Sarin at UC Davis ran the Shamatha Project, one of the most ambitious meditation studies ever conducted. 60 participants, a 3-month intensive retreat, 6 hours of meditation a day. After the retreat, the meditation group showed telomerase activity that was about 30% higher than the control group. Now, it's important to be honest here. Saran himself stated, the main takeaway isn't that meditation directly increases telomerase. Rather, meditation improves psychological well-being, and that boost in well-being is what correlates with more active telomerase. So it's not like you just sit still and your telomeres magically grow longer. Instead, sitting still makes your mind more peaceful, which reduces stress, meaning your cells don't age as fast as they otherwise would. And that alone is incredibly significant. Then what about that viral claim of a 20 years younger brain? Eileen Luters from UCLA studied the brains of 50 long-term meditators and compared them to 50 non-meditators. Using machine learning analysis, she found that at age 50, a meditator's brain was estimated to be 7.5 years younger than the control groups. 7.5, not 20. And this was a cross-sectional study, meaning we can't definitively say meditation caused the difference. Perhaps people whose brains are naturally younger tend to stick with meditation practices longer. But still, 7.5 years? Just from sitting quietly on a regular basis, that cannot be ignored. Now we move from telomeres to the brain, and this is where the story gets even more fascinating, but also requires more caution. You might have read the headlines. 8 weeks of meditation increases gray matter in the hippocampus, or meditation shrinks the amygdala. Both of those claims stem from legitimate studies. Huldzul from Harvard in 2011 for the hippocampus, and her own team in 2010 for the amygdala. But, and this is crucial, in 2022, Richard Davidson's lab in Wisconsin, who happens to be one of the most prominent meditation researchers in the world, conducted a replication study on a much larger scale. 218 participants, 3 groups, active control. And the results, no significant structural brain changes from meditation in any of the previously reported regions. This doesn't mean meditation has no effect on the brain. It means short-term structural claims were premature. What does have incredibly strong evidence are functional changes. In 2004, Davidson and Lutz studied 8 Buddhist monks with between 10,000 to 50,000 hours of meditation experience. This included Mathieu Ricard, whom the media dubbed the happiest man in the world, even if that's not exactly a scientific term. And what they found in the brains of these monks was truly extraordinary. Gamma waves. The brain waves associated with higher order consciousness, concentration, and information integration increased 2 to 3 times above the baseline. Not just during meditation either. Even at rest, their brains exhibited gamma waves far higher than the average person. This means their brains had changed fundamentally. Meditation wasn't just something they did, it had become a part of who they were. Everything we just discussed, metabolic control, temperature changes, brain transformations, the mind-body connection. The Buddha was talking about this 2,600 years ago, without a lab, without an MRI, without a single measuring tool. In the Kayagatasati Sutta, the Buddha taught that mindfulness of the body produces extraordinary abilities. And he described jhana, meditative absorption, using very physical language. The first jhana, he permeates and pervades, suffuses and fills this very body with the rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal. There is nothing of his entire body unpervaded. The third jhana, he experiences pleasure with the body, not just with the mind, with the body. 2,600 years before neuroscience discovered that meditation alters the structure and function of the brain, the Buddha had already stated that deep meditation permeates the entire body. It took Herbert Benson years of research to arrive at the same conclusion. The Buddha stated it in a single sentence: "Science is just getting here. The Buddha has been there all along." So after all this data, the most important question is, what should I do now? First, and this is important, do not try meditating for 7 days without food. That's for monks who have trained for decades under a teacher's guidance. Don't try this at home. But the good news, you don't have to be a Tibetan monk to reap the benefits of meditation. Research from Harvard, which has been replicated, shows that routine meditation changes the way your brain responds to stress. Brain waves shift. Neural connectivity improves. And yes, that reduced stress is linked to better preserved telomeres. Consistency is more important than duration. 10 minutes every day for a month changes your brain much more than a single 3-hour meditation session on a Sunday. Why? Because neuroplasticity works through repetition. Your brain changes because you do something repeatedly, not because you do it once with extreme intensity. So don't wait for perfection. Just start. Tomorrow morning. "2,600 years ago, a man sat silently beneath a tree. He had no measuring tools, no laboratory, no academic journals. All he had was a trained mind and the courage to sit still until he understood everything." Today, scientists from the world's best universities spend decades and millions of dollars to measure what happens when a human being does the exact same thing. And they found something extraordinary. Meditation isn't just sitting still. Meditation rewires your brain. It changes your cells. It alters the way your body ages. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If this episode made you think, or made you want to try meditating tomorrow morning? I want to know. Write in the comments, starting tomorrow, and let's keep each other accountable. Sabbe Sata Sukhi Hontu. May all beings be happy.